Tammy asked me to wow everybody, so I'm going to be loud and excited, and I'm barely going to speak in this presentation, so that's awesome for all of you. Yeah, everybody get a round of applause, please. I'm not going to hardly talk at all, so this is great. I'm excited about this session. Raise your hand if you're facing some talent challenges.
Yeah, didn't even have to ask.
I mean, it's a big problem, and there's a tremendous gap between the job needs and the people that we can hire. The job openings are larger than they've ever been, and the pool of talent is smaller than it's ever been. And life is a bunch of experiences. I mean, you got gaps, you got tough terrain to climb. You've got to do things differently than your competition to hire the right people that make a fit. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, and primarily Brock is going to talk about today the way that they have overcome the challenges of the talent war, the way that they have kind of conquered it by outside of the box thinking, not doing the same thing the same way. We can hire differently. So I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about this today.
All right, so a little introduction to myself if you don't know who I am. I'm our Chief Strategy Officer at Withers Ravenel. We're about 350 people, civil engineering, landscape architecture, all that kind of stuff. So some of you obviously are in different fields. But I like to have a lot of fun, so this is my NDSU picture up here. So I went to North Dakota State. Yes, that's right. She's on my team, that's right.
You paid her.
Anyway, and if you don't know, they've won like 9 of the last 10 national championships in football at FCS. But anyway, that's nothing. But for me, I have a diverse background of experience and in different areas of the country. I grew up in North Dakota, obviously, been to a few other places, but I have tri-sector leader experience. So if you want to read a great article, Harvard Business Review covers that very, very well. And so what it is nonprofit, for-profit entities and government. So I've been kind of across the spectrum, and I've been hiring in those areas and things like that for a long time and bringing a lot of experience. So that's what I'm hoping I can help, bring that diversity here to you today. So Blake, if you want to.
Yeah. Yep. So if you don't know me, Blake Godwin, president of Client Savvy, started my career in this industry, in the AEC industry. Worked for a large subcontractor called USI right out of college. The economy was booming, and then we all remember 2006, right? 2006 was a tough time, got out of it, and have found my way back to it. So excited to do that. Went to UNCW. I'm a part of the ACEC Affiliate Advisory Committee, as well as the ACEC-NC Business Practices Committee. So really entrenched in the industry and love talking about all this. We're going to talk right now about why this is important to us. So the average employee attrition rate inside of the professional services sector is 17.9%. So we're already struggling to find people. We're also struggling to keep them. Why do we think that is? This is a question for everybody to answer.
Or we'll call on
somebody. Tammy, why are we struggling to keep people?
Because we are an old-fashioned industry. I'm speaking just from an AEC perspective, that we don't appreciate clients.
Yeah. What else could it be?
Burnout.
Burnout. Sure. What else could it be?
Opportunity.
Opportunity?
To move and get higher salaries.
Yeah. Okay. What else could it be?
A lot of flexibility.
Sure. How about we ask our technical professionals to sell? That's fun, right? We all got into engineering and technical professions to be sellers, right? So there's a lot of things that we're doing that are causing a lot of conflict inside of our organizations that makes churn easy to happen. Whether it's over $5,000 or $17 a paycheck now with the tax rates, but anyway, that doesn't matter. $17 a paycheck, people are leaving our organizations. We know that at 17.9% attrition rate, the average employee loss in professional services cost your firm $100,000, bottom line. I think that's conservative. Chad, what do you think? I think that's conservative. What if you lose a rainmaker and they take 4 or 5 clients with them? I mean, it gets expensive really quick. So this is something that we need to invest in. This is something that should be critical to our business. If you're a 100-person firm and you're average, you've got a $1.79 million a year bottom line problem. Kind of critical. So we know that there's leadership burden, there's lost knowledge when you have client attrition, you've got lost clients, lost talent, and Brock, no replacements.
That's right. No replacement, small pool. So that's the important part, to really understand that. And that's why we have to make sure that we are doing things to look outside of our industries and looking at other places to make it so we can fill those gaps.
And this is why I'm excited for you all to hear this story today, because I think Withers Ravenel, though they may not say that they've conquered it 100%, they've gone outside of the way of thinking, and they've hired differently, and they're filling gaps, and they're putting the right people in the right positions, which leads to lower attrition, which improves an employee experience, which improves employee engagement. And I think everybody should take this in, take a lot of notes. We'll share the slides with you, but this is a great opportunity to think differently and think outside of the box.
So we'll go a little bit over economy a little bit, which most people know most of this stuff. However, I will say something that we've done as a firm, and it's been more recent. So I became our chief strategy officer at the first of this year. I was our chief growth officer before. And the idea behind it is that we got to start looking at different ways to not only fill this gap, but to figure out how to increase our net revenue, profitability. We have an innovation team, so I'll get into, I can tell you a little bit about that too. So our innovation team, we have programmers on staff. We can do our own APIs, things like that a lot of firms really aren't doing. So we're trying to get way over on the other side and start thinking of unique ways to actually monetize what we're doing, and actually this value add thing that was, I sat in that session yesterday, but it was fantastic. But really trying to figure out what those things are to really try to help us not be commoditized, basically. So that's super important, but doing acquisitions is a big part of that. So we're trying to get, and some people go, how do you acquire and have people available to help from a leadership perspective or a management perspective, which is our biggest gaps that we have in the industry. And really what we have to do is we got to analyze the client base. We have to talk about it ahead of time. We've got to set expectations early. And in fact, we have to look internally and look at, hey, what are they doing so well? And should we not do something that's in our core services to actually start capitalizing on better profitability and other opportunities for people? So, that's kind of a sidebar here, but it's a really important piece that we won't get into a lot today. So just talk a little bit about markets, and you can see this is a PSMJ thing. Blake doesn't like us when we use PSMJ, but that's right. So this is why I get in the corner, right? So, but anyway, you can see that everything is trending up. But now, obviously, we have a lot of different pressures today that are way different than even when this report was done. But I'll just use a little bit of the housing market, which we are heavily involved with, especially in the Southeast. There's no change. Okay, what's going to happen is deals will become more strategic. There's so much capital coming into the Southeast, it's not going to change hardly anything. And you hear that across the board, but you hear there's a recession coming and things like that. Supply is so low across the United States, there's less than 1 month supply in most areas across the country. That's a huge deal. So this isn't really going to slow down for the long term. We may have some short-term bumps, but we're not going to be looking at depression or anything like that for long term. Next. So this is where, you can see that employment is above, and this is AE, but it's really that way in all industries, is that we are seeing that we're already above pre-COVID levels. Right now, the unemployment rate is 3.6%, and North Carolina is actually matching that. So we're very, very low, and we all know that people have exited the job market. Another big problem for us, and then now we're above the pre-COVID levels for employment. So same thing here, the number of job openings, though, however, which we all need help, and we all know it, is we are actually on the high end of things. So it's a divergent, curves basically on both sides, and we're going to end up even more divergent in the future. So the retirement wave, that's a piece of it, is underway already, so we're losing, I'm on the front part of the Gen Xers, so I learned a lot from the baby boomers. They're awesome, but super old school. And but it taught you the basics. It was really good, and that's something else. That's another discussion that we need to help train people on some of that. But bottom line is there is an exodus going on underway today. Succession planning should be a huge thing for all your firms. We're losing a tremendous amount of knowledge capital, and that is something that's really concerning. And then it's going to get worse in the future, and that's what you see on the chart there. Because the millennials is the next big group. Gen Xers aren't such a big group, but So millennials will be the next wave. So now is the time to start planning and start developing your plan to try to develop how you're going to get talent outside the industry.
Yeah, and there's a tremendous add-on from a challenge perspective here. Most of our firm's brand loyalty resides with specific individuals. It's not your brand, it's not your firm. So as these folks are exiting, what are we doing? How are we hiring strategically? How are we using succession planning to make sure that when these folks leave, that your clients don't have an opportunity to go look somewhere else?
That's right. So we all know about this. I just alluded to that a little bit before, the Great Resignation. And there's many different ways you can pencil it in, but people are leaving the workforce. You know, yes, retirements are one, but just disenchanted, not making enough money, family, whatever the case may be, people are leaving. And so now we got to figure out, again, how do we retain people? That'll come a little bit later in the presentation from an employee experience standpoint. So, but why do our teammates leave us? Okay, we just talked about it, opportunity. So you can see the list up there. Kurt, what do you think?
They just don't feel like they're supported as much as they'd like to be.
And you're saying something that we were actually talking about a little bit before, is supported, but how do they want to be supported? Are we going to take what we've learned in our career and try to put our lens on them? I mean, that happens a lot, where, hey, I'm going to put myself in your shoes, okay? And that's great, and it's noble and everything, but then we come at it with our own lens. And that's what we can't do. So, for instance, so here's a little sidebar too, is that how we have transitioned some things is that we've taken our senior leadership and actually moved them out of managing teams. Now think about that. That's what I've learned. This is what I've done. This is how we do it. This is how I mentor people. They need to sit right next to me. So what has happened is, as we've gotten young leadership in with the help of those folks as subject matter experts in divesting institutional knowledge, okay, what has happened is, even from a in-office standpoint, so in July we went full-time in the office, and right now we're about 25% in the office. That's a complete flip from where we were. I was in an office that was led by a lot of more senior people. I've always worked remote since 2010, worked from anywhere, any place, anytime. But what has happened is we put young leaders in place, and their energy and understanding technical environment, the technical people jumped on board. That same office that was about 99% in the office is now about 15. Completely different. So that's the different ways to think. Now we're connecting. They love the flexibility, all that kind of stuff. But now they understand how to use technology much more than us old school people. So, any other things to share? It's a pretty good list here. So, but this is the number one thing that's important, is getting the right seat. So I just talked a little bit about our senior people and moving them into spots. So I'm going to call out Jess Vollmer in the corner over there. So she's our Chief People Officer. So please feel free to talk to her about some of this stuff too.
Don't ask her if they've solved the talent war.
Yeah, oh yeah. She was telling him, well, you just let me know when that happens, right? But what we've done anyway is we've instituted, and here's another promotional little plug, but Gallup, you all know those folks. They do all the polls and everything, but they have a tremendous amount of data too. So just like Zweig and a bunch of other people, and everybody references each other because it's all important and all valuable in different lenses. But what they have this program that they have that really tries to focus on people's strengths, and it's got 34 strengths to it and stuff like that. But what we've done is we're not worried about the bottom of your list. We understand where that is, and it doesn't mean you can't use them and things like that. But the top of your list, we want to focus there. Mm-hmm. So back to the conversation about taking our senior people and moving away from teams, like we've all done in our careers, is we've taken technical people and shoved them into management and thought that was going to be a winner. And it's really not, for the most part. Right. So the idea is, okay, let's try to do something differently. But that's been a fantastic program, and she and her team have led the way on that, along with some other stuff you'll see a little bit here later.
I want to add to that about just putting the right people in the right seats. Again, I'm just going to go back to a very simple model that this entire industry has, which is seller-doer. Nobody got into this business to go sell. So why are we not strategically looking outside of the technical profession to hire client relationship managers? that actually like doing this stuff, that actually like creating outcomes for our clients, which, oh, by the way, you'll see in a later presentation, is the number one reason why clients are choosing you now. Are you partner oriented? Are you focused on outcomes? If you're in the construction business, your client doesn't want the building. They want the outcomes that the building creates. And so we have to figure out how to solve that and put the right people in the right place that understand what those outcomes are, so our technical professionals can then design to create the outcomes that they're looking to get. And that's really about putting the right people in the right seats.
And we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later with our CSM folks.
I'm going to give you this.
You're going to give me that now?
Yeah.
So, except I'm going the wrong way here. All right. So, so considering right people in the right seat and on the right bus and rowing in the right direction and stuff, we don't even expect perfection on any of that stuff. Or, you know, you got people in the back of the bus, in front of the bus, all that other stuff. But at least if you're all rowing, if we could use a boat analogy, in the same quadrant, that's awesome. That's what we need. But to go with what Blake said about putting right people in the right seats from a understand client perspective, it also is super important from the employee experience standpoint.
Absolutely.
Super important. And so we'll be talking about that a little bit later. I'd like to point out Don Mazzell in the corner too, if you don't know who he is, if you want to give a little wave. But he's our lead for our client success team, which I'll talk about today. So if I'm missing something, please, let me know. So why do most people leave a company? So we talked about the opportunities and everything else, and I just gave examples of how we flipped on the digital side. Managers, huge. So do you have all the right managers in the right seats? Not only to manage a team, he was talking about managing clients. I will say our client success team also manages our teams, but they just don't have to worry about HR and all this other stuff. So they get to focus on the project delivery and the experiences for everybody. That is the goal with them. So influence of managers, 70%. If somebody is being successful, and that's the last piece of it, very, very engaged managers that are really trying to embrace and be open-minded and, you know, try to be progressive on, you know, process and things like that. Automation, another big thing that we all need to be considering. You see that 60% almost of people are actually more successful. So it's very, very important. So with all of this stuff, it's creating a perfect storm. And how do you get out of that? How would you get out of that situation, right? That's what we're all trying to figure out. So we have a little question for you. So if you want to pull out your phones, and we'll have a little QR code up here, so you don't have to log in. You should be able to zoom in
And we are crossing our fingers that this works.
Yes. If it doesn't, we know the questions. And then hopefully it'll pop up. And if not, Blake, you're going to have to pull it on your phone.
Okay.
Be ready.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I think it's on the next screen, potentially.
You'll have to pull it up because it's not. So, I mean, the question, if you have, are people getting on? Can see it? Awesome. That's fantastic. So, Blake, you're going to have the results.
Raise your hand if it was talent acquisition.
We're going old school.
Not talent acquisition. There's a lot of hands that were left down. Are you just not raising your hands, or is it something different? If it's not talent acquisition, what's your biggest challenge?
Process.
Robbie, stop, please. No, is it talent acquisition?
Morale.
Morale. Okay.
Which in our studies against client experience and financial performance, morale is the most correlated driver of connected to CX.
Okay. So, if I may, what's the root cause of the morale?
Don't know that yet.
Is it putting butts in seats? Is it hiring the wrong ideal employee profile? I think a lot of us, and this is a great opportunity to speak about this for a second, is that turning away work is tough. I mean, it's painful. Any leadership is going to really struggle with turning away work, but a lot of us are doing it, and we're turning away work because we don't have what? We don't have manpower. We don't have people to do it. So then what's our natural reaction if you're focused on your pockets? What's your natural reaction? Hire anybody. You want to come work for me? Sure. Come on. I haven't done the work that I need. I just know that you have the education to do it, but you might not be an ideal fit. If you don't know your ideal clients, if you don't know your ideal employee profile, it's something that you should spend some time doing. Because I believe, and stats would prove this, specifically when it comes to morale, when you bring the wrong people into the wrong culture and you have somewhat of a toxic environment because of that, morale goes down. And then when morale goes down, you have this vicious cycle of poor employee experience creates what? Poor client experience. And then it just keeps going. It keeps going. And so it's a tough thing. And so if anybody wants to hear more about ideal employee profiles, you can talk to Brock or myself about that because they've done a lot of work with this.
So considering that, so how many of you all have built an employee profile? Mm-hmm. You're awesome, Tammy. That's fantastic.
She's a rock star.
Anybody else? We haven't either, so I'm not. But it is on our list. So here's priorities again, and we all have them. So we can't do everything that we all talk about here and at other places. So we got to make sure that we're focused on the 2 or 3 things that will make us the most successful and have the most ROI. But that is an important piece. So from an acquisition standpoint, for instance, we built our acquisition profiles. So for like one of our regions, we had 2 different ones. We had one that was, hey, here's our priority. This is number 1. This is who we're looking for. But if we can't find number 1, what's our number 2? You know, and you don't want to get too far down the list on number 3 or anything like that. And then we're trying to expand in the Southeast too. So that's a goal for us. So we have 3 different acquisition profiles based on other regions and things like that. Well, the same thing applies for leadership profiles. What's your profile for your leadership? Flexibility, digital. We just talked about that. That's a switch from where we were. Are we hiring who we know or people that are like us? We shouldn't be. We need to be looking way differently. So building those profiles, absolutely important, and that goes with the employee. So different positions should have those. Yeah, we got job descriptions and everything, but it doesn't include the intangibles that are highly important. So so nationally, that is the answer. Talent acquisition, which we've talked about a whole bunch of different times, and I hope you enjoy the Scooby-Doo reference. How many people don't know Scooby-Doo? Awesome, that's great. Sometimes it goes. So what is your strategy? What are you willing to do? And back to the prioritization of things. So we threw up, hey, this is what we're doing today. We're creating basically a circular environment, and all we're doing is putting ourselves in a bad position as businesses and companies and industries. Yeah, let's just throw money at them. Let's just do this. That's a short-term fix. But long-term, it's culture. It's the right people, as Blake had talked about. That is what's important. Putting people in the right seats. Hey, we're going to embrace new things and find champions to do that. That is what's going to make people successful. It isn't doing the more money, more problems type thing. So anyway, but what are some other strategies that you may want to consider or thinking about or something? So there's a lot of negative on that list, and that negative is a lot longer than it is on the positive side. But that's where people need to be focused on. So I already talked about technology, flexibility a little bit with our own firm. But now we talked about lean, increasing efficiencies. That's huge. Automation to me is a huge thing. That's why we got programmers on our staff now. That's why we're looking at other ways. That's why we're using a bunch of digital technology. That's why we're doing this today with Smartsheet, if anybody doesn't know that, and that may not be our answer, but it's what we jumped into and it's what we're using. People use Salesforce and all kinds of other stuff. But they have client portals, for instance, where we can share our information on the fly. So we're already connecting with a few of our clients and actually trying to beta test or pilot test. You heard some of that in some of the other sessions. So that is extremely important too. But how about non-traditional talent? And that's the focus of this today. And it's not getting the Sesame Street crew together, somebody that totally doesn't understand what's going on or can't, manage and things like that. How many people don't know Sesame Street? Awesome. All right. 2 for 2. I love it. So, but what is that? And so I wanted to bring this gentleman up. If you ever have the chance to see this guy live, it's Vin Jiang. He's a magician, but a motivational speaker. So I saw him at a ULI conference, my wife Chandra and myself, and we were there. Phenomenal. And what he really did, if you want to look up a video on, I should have done it on a QR code, but perceptions. So that's circulated around our office. It's really a cool thing of how, back to the lens, and you think he's doing all this magic, but they staged it all. And so they actually were recording what they were doing to make it look like what you were seeing in that one lens. It is phenomenal. But anyway, so non-traditional ways of thinking and stuff like that. So I would encourage you if you haven't seen him. So these few slides are courtesy of Jess Vollmer and her team. So I took some of this, but we have a talent strategy. And obviously we've talked about, acquisitions, and it's not just organic growth. We are tapped out on organic growth. Again, hiring a bunch of people, get them here, don't fit our culture, things, we're done with that. We are optimizing. This is the time for everybody to optimize. And I haven't talked about it much and on the screen, but whether it's our clients, so we're getting down to tier A clients instead of tier C clients and things like that, and really looking at those kind of strategies. Now, obviously, when times get tough, you want to have a bench of clients and things like that where you can diversify and have other people. So you can't shut everybody out, but you're going to focus on a few and give them the client experience that you're looking for too. That's really key. But keep existing talent, and that's where these next slides are going to come into play, and it's going to show all the work that our people team, our HR team, have been working on along with a lot of our managers. And we haven't had total immersion or acceptance, so we'll talk about that a little bit later with the CSM team, but that is another challenge. But you got to find the champions, and Jess will tell you, I'm the biggest champion probably in our company for Clifton Strengths and doing the Gallup stuff. Love it. Talk about it every single day. I'm talking to you about it today. So to me, that's highly important to figure out what those things are in your organization that you can focus on and start living culture every single day. So here's a bunch of stuff, and I'm not going to go through them all, but there's a few key ones. The Future Project Managers Academy that we put up is phenomenal. We have people running through it. My wife has done some things in the industry too, leadership development for people and things like that, and you have a group like 12 people go through, and you actually have this. I mean, people do universities. We're not to that level yet, but you'll see we got a lot of programs going on, and obviously this will all get shared, so you can kind of take that, and if you have questions on any of that stuff, please feel free to reach out. So, and honestly, and Jess can shut me down here too, but I'm very transparent as a person. You're not getting anything that you don't, see, but I also, when it comes to business, we are willing to share a whole lot of stuff. And the idea is we are an industry together. We are professional services together. We need to help each other. That's what this whole conference is about,
That's right.
is sharing information, sharing our experiences and stuff. And even though we might have spent some time developing it, people go, well, how would you give that up? Why would you do that? You still got to have people execute it. You still got to have people that are going to be champions for it. There's a lot of work behind it.
That's what Chad mentioned yesterday. You can share your strategic plan with your competitors. You're having a hard enough time implementing it yourself. It's not like your competitors are going to take it.
That's exactly right. So take a look at this. This is even more stuff that we do. So we were talking about employee experience earlier here at the table, and the idea behind it truly is trying to maximize and giving them the opportunity to grow, develop. We found that through our engagement surveys that we do with Gallup every year. That engagement is highly tied to development and recognition, some of these other things. So trying to figure out how we develop, but not only that, it helps your CX program. Again, if the employees are happy, if your owners or whoever are all happy, things take care of themselves. And that goes back to the morale that was talked about before with Mitch. So, but anyway, you can see everybody's got DEI programs and things like that. But one thing that we've heard recently, it's a lot. You can see it's a lot. 4 years ago, none of these programs existed. That's how we've changed, and they've put in so much work, and our teams have, and our managers have. But we've actually had people that say, all right, we need to take a breath. It's a lot. We can't do it all. So we went all in, and we had great leadership that were supportive of our CEO, Jim Canfield, is all over this, understands the importance of it. So now it's trying to figure out, okay, what's the priorities again? How do we scale this back a little bit, but don't forget about them because we're going to keep them in the mix. Again, we just kind of went and swung the pendulum the other way a little bit. So, but this is like some of the results you get there. I just wanted to show this very quickly, but you can see, I mean, and it's hard to get a relativeness of what this means in the industry, but we are, as Withers Ravenel, on the top end from an AE perspective for engagement. And partly because of all the stuff we're doing. When we first started, we weren't as good as this. And it's gotten much better. And we keep monitoring all the time. You can see, I'll just show you on the next slide, all the pluses that are happening in key areas for us. Know what's expected of me. Direction. What are those expectations up front? How many of you all are sharing budget information and everything with all your staff, saying, here's what I expect. If you have somebody just starting, okay, hey, here's what it would typically take, but we know it's going to take you longer, so here's your budgeted hours, and actually walk through that with them. Stuff like that. So we're doing a lot more, and what it's helped is our quality of work has went up, and the engagement part has really gotten better too. So, but what is a key component of engagement? And we've said it like 5 times through this whole thing, it's right people in the right seats, but it's also looking at, because of that, non-traditional talent. Don't ask our engineers to be seller doers all the time and things like that. So I'm speaking from our industry, but it really applies to a lot of other industries, of course. So, but these are some of the things that we have that we didn't have. I mean, we started our CX program. Eddie Staley just walked in the room over there too. So Eddie wave, some people know he had a session yesterday. And, but he helped start this program 6 years ago, a little bit more than that. And it's taken us a long time to get where we're at, and we're still not where we need to be. But we have a very good program in place. So, but now it's champions. When we were on the infrastructure side of things, more of our governmental side, that's where it was led a long time ago. The development side, more of the private folks, no interest. It's not important. We had a lot of old school people kind of in that mix too, and nope, don't need it. So it started there, and now it's progressed, and now it's actually throughout our company. But now we're still growing it and things like that. But you can see we talked about innovation earlier. We have project coordinators now. Here's a unique thing about project coordinators, and I don't have them in detail here, but the project coordinators actually have a path. They can come in with a high school education, and they can become project managers for us. That's something that's not normal in the AE world. It's not lawyers, accountants, same thing. How do they get into that managing clients, account managers, things like that? So if they got the talent, skills, we train them, we go through the Future Project Managers Academy because there's interest in them. That's what we need to do to help develop our people and start figuring out how we can fill these gaps. So, but yeah, we got business analysts, but now we are looking, the next frontier, I already talked a little bit, but the office leads is another place for us. So we tend to say, hey, practice area lead, you're in that office, can you be the office lead as well? So we are set up based on our practices from a profit center standpoint, not regions. So, and we did that on purpose. So back to what Jason said, the reason we did that was for process, consistency, making sure that our practice is taken care of first, and we'll worry about the regions later. Even though I love regions, because they know the local, what's happening, they're all engaged a lot more, so I think there's a benefit in it, no doubt. But you can see the definition of success, from this is our client success managers, this is what we look at, but there's a component in here that's not shown, and it's profitability. Huge. So back to optimizing, what is the sweet spot for your clients? Back to client profiles. What are those? So that you can actually document it, share it in writing so everybody understands and is on the same page so that we can all be consistent 80% of the time. 80-20 rule. Pareto principle is huge and it's can looked at many different ways. So, but anyway, so the evolution of our client success team and why we did this, and Eddie's a better speaker about this than I am, but we saw gaps, obviously. We're having client management issues with our technical people. They were so focused on the work that they weren't really paying attention to clients. We had a business development team, and that amplified it even more when we acquired a firm back in, well, that's been 4 years ago now. When we acquired that firm, they had a whole bunch of BD people. And so we actually have, Eddie, 10 people that are on our BD team? That's huge for a 350-person firm. So that whole changed the dynamic and said, okay, these guys want to go get work, And then our technical teams aren't connected, and so we had to figure out a way to try to connect and make that happen. So that's how the evolution of a client success manager. You see client officer up there, that's another piece of it that I won't get into today, but it's really looking at the overall health. It's kind of not a BD person, it's a client development person, and understand and doing high level touches so you're not getting into the weeds of maybe even doing the management or getting into the specific projects as much. So this is a picture of our team. It's grown a lot from where it started. We actually started and incubated the actual client success team in our development side because we already had people that were actually doing that. And again, we took our senior managers and moved them out of teams. They love dealing with clients, let them focus on that. And so that's how we started it kind of officially, and then we moved it into its own team. So again, pilot program, incubation, try to figure out what that looks like. But for us, it was a factor that has really helped our talent acquisition. Okay, and our talent acquisition, when we go in with client success and we tell them, hey, you don't have to manage a team anymore. What? Never heard of that. That's awesome. And that, again, AE industry, it's very antiquated. So and so they go, really, I like that. So when somebody comes in, we can kind of say, here's an option. We don't hire necessarily for a specific position. We post it, but when somebody comes in, we start analyzing their strengths day one, and we start figuring out where are the places that you can go in our organization, and start giving them options. Nobody gives anybody options. I'm hiring a project manager, that's what I need. I need it on this team. We want to get the right people in the right seat and get the right people. So if they can go to help somebody else and it doesn't really fit here, we're all in, trying to figure it out. We do that quite often. So Blake, you were going to say something?
Gosh, 10 minutes.
Oh, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so if we got 10 minutes left, I'm going to breeze through these slides. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's my excitement. I try to do that. But there's all kinds of ways that we've developed to try to say, hey, we can do this better, put people on the same page again. So we do a lot of client feedback. So we're using CFT exhaustively, and that's went through our whole organization now. And getting that feedback and understanding, but communicating that with everybody, but setting the expectations early for all your clients, your people on the team, things like that, and trying to get people included is super important. So anyway, one thing I want to share with you, and if you want to take out your phones again, you can scan that in. It's an Excel document that has been vetted. I simplified it a little bit and got rid of some specific stuff that applies to us. But what that is it's at least a start for you to start thinking about how do you communicate. So we just talked about that, and set the expectations. So it's got who's going to support this effort, who's going to lead this effort, and we sit down, and we're not using it consistently, but we're doing a much better job of it. But hey, what are you doing as part of this team? And have a team meeting very, very early in the process. Even if you can get a pre-proposal, you're setting up yourself, pre-positioning for something, or you're talking to your clients, sit down with the client and go, here are the type of projects that are coming your way, and plan for all that stuff, and then start assembling the teams early. But once you start, who's doing what? Because it's so wishy-washy. Everybody they say it out loud, but it's not in writing. And then everybody, well, that's what I heard. Well, this is the idea. Hopefully will help you, at least give you a basic document to say, we're being very clear about this, and it allows you to be flexible. I don't want to do the invoicing on this project. Can you? It makes more sense. You're a technical person, but they really love technical people to talk to. Our client does. So let's merge those two, and the CSM plays a lesser role, potentially. The other part for us as CSM is really looking at large projects and large clients. That's where, again, back to focus on your CX experience. You saw the list of people. We don't have enough people to manage all of our stuff this way. We're still building this, so we've focused on large and important and profitable and a lot of net revenue on those clients to do this kind of thing. So anyway, hopefully you find that.
Yeah, I'll say too, we speak to hundreds of firms a year, and a project charter's not something that most firms have. So hopefully that's something that you can appreciate that Withers Ravenel is willing to share. I think it could be helpful for anybody in the room, whether you're an AEC or accounting or wealth management or legal, something pretty cool and pretty critical to set up expectations and success inside of your organization.
So we've already talked about some of the challenges. Acceptance has been really challenging for us. So champions, number one goal, got to figure out who those are and go talk to them and sit down with them early. Start going, do you like this program? Give us your input. What's happening? And I know people are doing that. Tammy, you had talked about a little bit, doing those kind of things. So trying to really make sure that you get these people that are going to be cheerleaders and going to help drive it. And that goes to, and I had it on the second slide, but I used to be a high school baseball and basketball coach. So for me, is how do you motivate people? How do you get inclusion? Everybody's got a seat, so right people, right seats. Great football analogy, you're not going to take the wide receivers. So Danny and I were talking about this. You're not going to take the wide receiver who has a 4.3 40 for speed and put them on the line and take your 350-pound guy who runs like a 6 and put him at the wide receiver spot. And then actually ask him, hey, you need to go on a diet, you need to lose weight, you need to do this and train. This is what we tend to do as industries. We ask all our people to do those kind of things. So that's why it's so important to understand the strengths and understand the champions and everything else to get it going. And then you need to celebrate the successes. So anybody watch NCAA basketball? Yeah. So the women's team Baylor, they're not going to win it all. We got Connecticut, we got all this other stuff. Persistence, believing in yourself, believing in this, having the champions within your team to actually help propel you to the next level and then celebrate them. That is huge for success. These are some of our celebrations. I mean, wellness, that's another piece. I'm on our Wellbeing committee. I've said a few times I don't have necessarily the bandwidth to do it, but happy to help. And so I'm recording a video on boxing and saying, here's how you relieve stress and things like that. A little 30-second thing to help, show that we're all part of this, but healthiest employers. But these are our client experience awards, our ESOP. We're 100% ESOP. So for us winning this, we just this last year had the ESOP Employee of the Year in the nation. This all goes back to the employee experience and all the other stuff that we're doing to help propel our CX and put people in the right seats. So the questions for you are here. And kind of walked through those already, but what is going to be your story for the future? Are you going to adapt? Are you going to try to take on these new challenges? Are you going to do it in a responsible way to not overwhelm people and burn them out? Because there are exterior pressures. Our leadership, we have a consultant that helps us out, and we have little 15-minute sessions every once in a while that, as our executive team, we sit and talk about things that we shouldn't do or things we can do better and keep reminding ourselves of those kind of things. So one of them was putting external pressures unknowingly on our people. Do it all the time. Hey, we got this great new project. Hey, we got to learn this. I'm trying to get my stuff done. And then I got all these other programs and I want to grow and things, and yeah, it's great, but I don't know anything about it. Now I got to go spend a bunch of extra time. That's a pressure sometimes. And our clients will come in and say, I need you to do this for me. And this is where the CX model is huge. Facilitation. Huge. It isn't about doing the work and being everything to everybody and trying to do everything that they got on their plate, but we got to help guide our premier clients, our Tier A clients, Tier Bs too, and try to figure out, okay, what do we need to do to help you? So I'll finish up with this last thing, and I used it yesterday, and Eddie knows the story very well too, but there's a local company called Mako, and they do lab testing and stuff like that. So here's a unique way to start thinking about how non-traditionally you can do things. So he was trying to get a large client, didn't want anything to do with lab, said, hey, I'm not going to give you my work. I've been with this firm for a long time. Then he asked the question, what is the greatest challenge that you would really love solved? And that person said, laundry. So what he did is did a whole bunch of investigation, figured out how he could save them money, got some information from them, how he could find the best laundry person for them, solved that problem, and he ended up getting all the lab work. So it's a great example, again, of non-traditional thinking and trying to do that kind of stuff outside of our industry. So we don't have much time for questions, but if
we do.
Do we? Good.
Yeah, we do. We've got about 5 minutes for questions. So
excellent.
I think we've got enough time. Everybody in here is dealing with some talent struggles. You've got a huge Withers Ravenel team in here who's overcome the challenge. It'd be great to hear. I mean, what specific questions do you have, not only about the presentation, but challenges that you're facing that maybe we can give you some suggestions for? Not everybody at once.
See, this is where we got to have music. Gary.
You used the word acquisition.
Yeah.
And this whole series was on talent acquisition. It sounds to me like when you say that, you're talking about acquiring companies in your cases now as opposed to individuals.
Correct.
And so that's when you say thinking big, that's where you guys have found success is by going that direction.
We're trying. So I use the BD team. Great example. When we acquired that firm 4 years ago, that was something we didn't have. Eddie was our BD guy, basically, for the most part. So we acquired a whole bunch of people that shifted our focus within the company. So yes, acquisitions. And this is where, coming back to organic growth, go hire a great individual. That's awesome. But try to go find that leader or project manager, because we can all hire people coming out of school all day long, even though it's still a challenge, but it's a lot easier there. So, and we just don't have the people to manage them.
Can I follow up to that?
Yes, yeah.
So you hire a company. How do you make certain you have the work for them? What is your plan for making sure they're utilized when they come in?
So the amazing part about that, at least today for most everybody, if anybody's a good company, they're already busy, right? Our challenge is trying to, and I said this a lot earlier, is redirecting focus. Figure out where the advantage is of both of our companies to come together. And again, it may be that we aren't going to do a service anymore, and we're going to pick up their service, and we're going to help support them, because it can't be a one-way street. Hey, divest all your clients. We need your talent. We need all this. This is a partnership, and this is a family, and we're trying to build all that together. So to really have those expectations talked about early in the process. Now, I will tell you, I'm new to the position, done some of those types of things in the past, but that is still a learning experience for us.
I'll add to that too. I mean, I think they've done a good job at it, but I think building your human capital off of M&A is also very dangerous. It's very dangerous. If you're a client-centric organization that's focusing on client experience management and you're hiring a bunch of people that you don't know, it makes it very difficult to have it your way.
Yep.
And now you've got 50 new employees that you got to train to do it the Withers Ravenel way.
That's right.
And you can very quickly start to lose like brand recognition, loyalty. I mean, even, 30% of equity is lost in a successful acquisition, like day one, because people leave, they take clients with them. They enjoyed working with the small 15-person firm in town. They didn't want to work for a 500-person engineering firm anymore. There's a lot of danger there. You guys have done it well, but heed caution, because getting talent through acquisition of other firms is also very dangerous if not done correctly.
You have to know their strengths again, and that's why you got to talk to the
Yeah.
leadership, and once you get into due diligence phase and start figuring out, do you agree with what we're doing? Mm-hmm. What are your ideas? What are our ideas? Merge those together. Can you be the champion for us in your organization?
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
huge.
I think if I could add something here the question hasn't been asked, would be, who do you think you're competing with? You're competing against tech firms. You're competing against other folks, and you don't have to write your job requisitions for technical professionals only, but if you go and you look at all of your job requisitions for folks that you're trying to hire, they are specifically for an engineer, for an accountant, for wealth management, for a lawyer, and they don't have to be. And I think that's, if it hasn't been highlighted enough today, I think that's what you guys have done well, is that your client relationship managers aren't technical professionals. They're people that were looking they were looking to come look at Client Savvy, work for us. They were looking to work for some other industry. And they found a way to hire people that are outside of the technical profession that do what they love doing, which is relationship management.
Can't train passion.
You can't.
Let people be who they are.
Can't.
Super important.
Yeah.
And let them excel, and we will help train.
Yep. Tim.
Run certifies on your entire team, all 350 people?
Yes.
We did. And now you're doing it, and now you use that as a benchmark to bring people in. I'm assuming that's part of the interview process.
We don't use it as a screen.
No.
Because it's not really meant to be a screen. After 2 best project managers, and they have wildly different strengths. They're accomplishing the same work, but they're doing it with different talents.
Yeah.
So it's really important not to be so discrete, but it's great after you have them on board to get them engaged in the team gets to know them, what their strengths are.
Right, and we do the same thing. We share clients having openly everybody's strengths. There's a shared folder where everybody can see. So what makes you tick? How can I work with you? How can I collaborate with you to make your strengths highlighted and used to their best use? And same for everybody else.
Just use your strength.
I was just going to follow up on that and ask in a little bit more detail.
Sure.
How you would use that, aside from making it public, aside from putting everyone through that analysis. How do you leverage it?
Living it every day. Again, I'm a huge champion of it, talk about it all the time, talk about their strengths. Hey, boy, I mean, just listening to you, it sounds like these are in your top 5 or something, 2 strengths. But that means you got to understand and be able to read people well. And this is even in the interview process. So you're not doing it formally or anything, but I'll do it all the time where I'm sitting looking at this person and listening to them, which I'm not a great listener sometimes. So, but anyway, things to work on some. But anyway, trying to get into, gosh, I'm really thinking that this person could have this role, this role, this role, like I was saying earlier, and not putting them into this. I got to take this person, pound the square peg in the round hole because I need this position filled. That's how, I mean, we're indirectly using it, but we're not doing it as a screening tool. It shouldn't. Yeah.
So to add a little bit more, we talk about strengths that are met under development meeting. There are 2 meetings here that are sort of like development planning meetings. They're less performance review and more like where's your career going, and we talk about strengths, how they better use their strengths there. We're asking our managers to put their strengths into play when they think about managing their teams and how can they show up differently to their teams.
Or even have their teams understand their teams. So we put matrices together for our teams. So that's another way of doing it. And then you can see the profile. Where are all the strengths? Where are our gaps? Okay, so we got a people person.
You don't use the strengths to form the teams. You form the teams and then
Correct.
identify the strengths
Yes.
and leverage.
Because Gallup would encourage you to, like, even if you don't, let's say you're in sales and you don't have influencing, well, what do you have in your top 10 that you can go and how can you influence in other ways? And so that's the learning, is that people can learn to leverage what is in your top 10 to get the work done. It's like, how do you find the power and edge of what you do have that you do naturally well, and bring that forward. And that's kind of like that keynote outline of your strengths.
So personal transparency. So 9 of my top 13 are influencing.
I mean, that's what we find in our firms, like everybody's the same. That's why they're just professional.
So if everybody's if everybody's got the same strengths, again, we were talking about that earlier, we tend to hire who we are, and we shouldn't. This is really getting out and trying to figure out where all those gaps are again. So, but doing the matrices has really been a very, and what we've done with some of that is, hey, this manager is actually a better trainer using their strengths to match up with this technical person's strengths, and we've moved people around in teams, whole new teams, and kind of, did some of that.
I think it's also interesting, like, Denise, I'd love to ask you, I don't think Newman Monson, if I may say, I don't think your goal is really to like grow and get huge. So your hiring practices are different. Withers, you guys want to be a 1,000-person company in a couple of years. So
maybe not a couple, but we'll
it's
get
different, and I think this is where client experience is interesting, though, because it's not all about growth. It's not all about we have our different practices and different ways of going about it. So I think you have to define your mission and what it is that you're trying to accomplish, then understand who your ideal employee profile is. It makes sense for a 42-person architectural firm who wants to do the coolest projects in the world and be the architectural firm of choice that stays 42 people and does it at a very profitable clip and doesn't have to go competitively bid after anything. And that's what you guys do. That's what you're known for. It's different, and it's great to have all the same strengths inside of your organization because that's who you are. Their firm is a little bit different in what they're trying to accomplish, so it's a little bit of a different hiring practice. I think that's critical to know.
So before we go there, if you don't mind, jump in. So just to, I will say I agree with that from a personality standpoint and culture and understanding, but it's still good to look at the technical gaps in these strengths and figure out we could actually improve by doing some of these things. So I'll give one more example of, and there's a thing called blind spots. So I got all this influencing, I got command, I got significance, I got competition, all kinds of other stuff in my top 10. And for me, if I don't watch out with that, I will bowl people over. And this is where my wife will kick me in the shin once in a while and say, that's enough, quit talking, that kind of thing. So, but understanding all that stuff, but now I go to the bottom of my list and I'm not a great executor. You all can execute. We're all professionals, we'll figure it out. Right, Tammy's going, no, I'm not an executor either. So I'm not an executor. So what we did in our company is I have an executive assistant. So think about how many of your firms have executive assistants for key people in your organization. I'm not saying I'm key, but so the idea is, hey, try to figure that out and try to fill the gaps with somebody that can actually get it done instead of, I got 10 million initiatives that I can think of and I'm thinking big ideas and stuff like that. But when it comes to actually making it happen, yeah, I can trudge through it, but I need somebody to actually take that piece over for me and make it happen. Again, that's where this really comes into play. So, sorry, thank you.
I was just going to say, we use Strength Finders a little bit differently. I mean, we use it internally, but we use it as a sales tool. So in our proposals, we're going to show you what the team profile is and how they're going to cater to your needs based on these different areas of the project. And we've discovered that's been really successful. Particularly in the healthcare industry right now, they're very big on co-location and big room and making sure everyone's talking. So for us, it's been incredibly helpful. I mean, we have over 3,000 employees, so we don't have everybody done just yet, but we're getting there, and we are using it in both ways. But just to give a little bit of a different perspective on how you might use it, if you're saying we have very similar strengths on our teams, there are different ways where you can say, here's where we're going to work well together, and here's how we've executed using these different talents on these projects that will then correlate back to your needs and what you.
Since you do it that way, do you also anticipate the challenges that you may have on the team and address those proactively?
And we talk about that, and we address them up front in the proposal.
Good.
To say, here are the things that we know to look out for and how we communicate as a team, and these are the people that we are going to be championing the effort to make sure that everything is completely smooth.
That's great. That's great.
Any other thoughts, questions?
Did you have to do anything different with your technical people as far as giving them maybe a different track or more tracks for them to feel like they're moving up in the company and being successful when you take away the management side or the BD side?
Good question. And I will tell you, here's a saying that I use quite often. So the org charts are needed. Not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of a true meritocracy either. Love the concept of lead from anywhere, but horizontal structures aren't good. You need some of that. But an org chart is there just for defining roles and responsibilities, but it doesn't mean you have to climb a ladder. It doesn't mean you have to, let's invent your next position. So the white space on the org chart is your opportunity. And we always say, help us create that for you. It's a two-way street. You know your strengths, you know what you'd like to do. So we have a MAP process, my action plan, so we go through goals and stuff like that. But you come in and say, I think, so we've developed whole new tracks for people. Hey, I'm going to be the director of project development. That's never been a position in our company before. We created it. We saw a gap, we saw a need, we needed some help with QA, QC and kicking projects off in the right fashion, getting intelligent, smart, technical people up on the front end and spread them out over projects. So we created that position. That pays handsomely because it's super important. So you can create salary, all this other stuff, but the idea is even horizontal moves or moves anywhere within the org chart are available to you. So, but we do have a defined, here's a client track, here's a technical track, and technical track can lead to management, and we haven't gotten rid of our seller doers. Still have some. And that's what, but what they need to realize, and this goes to expectations, the team is only going to be this big because you got to do all of these things. And then not only that, you need to maybe use a PC once in a while to help you execute because maybe that's not your strength, using people from other teams.
Yeah. Any other questions?
What was the video that you shared in front of the Venus presentation? I didn't catch the title of the video that you were going to share.
Which one? Oh, the perception video.
Yeah.
So V-I-H-N is his first name, Vin, and then Jang is G-I-A-N-G. Yes.
So you said you still have seller to as well as I guess client experience on certain type of things. So I completely gave up on seller to so, but do you have any other model than the two models we have, seller model and client?
So client officer is one of them. True business development is another one. What we've done is actually, to the point that I made earlier, the seller doer is getting them more focused on a particular industry. And actually, so for instance, if we're going to do a Starbucks, we can't have 20 people touching Starbucks. Okay, that's what you typically would do. You got a stormwater team, you got all these other, so trying to get it into a small sites, they have to understand the work they're getting into. It's national accounts, doing that kind of thing. So there are some things that we've done, but those are basically the 4 tracks that we have. So we haven't investigated or done anything. There's some hybrid, basically.
Any other questions?
Awesome,
Great.
thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
That's awesome.